I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift, candid conversations about the pivotal moments that changed lives forever. Hello, my friends. I am here with my friend Chantal, and we have known each other for a while.
Yeah, like 6 years.
Has it been that long?
It's been that long.
I distinctly actually remember you coming to the boot camp that I regularly went to, like your first day, I think. And you, I don't know if this was good for you or bad for you, but you were put into like the most clickiest of cliques at the boot camp at that particular morning. And I felt like I was the newest member of the clique, so I felt like responsible for keeping you like not feeling like an outsider of that group. I don't know if you remember it any differently.
No, I definitely remember. I remember just kind of sitting there and being like a little island. And then I remember it being one of the hardest workouts I had done in a very long time. It was an intense day.
Yeah, and then you were brand new, I think, to the gym too. So here you are seeing people that can do it really well because they've been doing it for 6 months, and you're like, how is this even possible? I remember those days. That was 6 years ago. Holy cow!
If my math is correct, 2016, 6 years, right?
Yeah, that is your math is correct.
It's hard to kind of wrap your head around when you realize how much time is going by already.
Right, and with the pandemic, it's like 2 years that have just kind of been a blip.
Literal blip. It's heartbreaking.
You know what? But I think, and maybe we'll talk about it, but I think this pandemic has taught us so many things about ourselves and about our communities and the people we want to surround ourselves with. So it hasn't been all terrible.
Oh, absolutely not. And I know for us personally, it simplified our lives in a lot of ways. We just realized how little we actually need to thrive and be happy and be content with where we are. And we've kind of taken that and run with it. And we're maintaining that now as we're, not necessarily done with the pandemic, but now that we're on the other side of it, where we're kind of implementing some things that we were able to change and discover over, isolation the past 2 years.
Yeah. And I think as you moved, you sold your house, bought a new house during the pandemic, didn't you?
We did it right before. We did it in 2019. Okay. And we fortunately got to do it before the housing market just went insane. And we were really,
me too,
really glad about that we got in when we did.
Yeah. Although you probably could have sold your old house for twice as much.
You're talking the truth. Like, it's almost mildly infuriating to think, because when we sold our house, we're like, oh, we're making a killing. Had we have just waited 1 year, we would have sold it for like 45, 50% more. Would have been crazy.
Right. And then be living behind a big box store next to a dumpster because you can't afford anything
exactly
else.
Right. Well, we thought about that. We're like, do we want to sell our new house? Because holy cow, like, it's going for an obscene amount more. But then we're like, how the heck would we find somewhere to buy? So we're just going to stay put.
Yeah. You have to be really fortunate to have like an extra house just laying around that you could live in.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't have that.
No,
so
fresh out. No.
Well, I appreciate you being a part of the Life Shift. My goal with these episodes is to really just talk about these moments, these like pivotal moments in someone's life that have changed things completely. And I love that you're on because you have really what I would see as two not sad or negative, but really just two moments in your life that you can kind of draw back to that made your life what it is today and a thriving, positive life that you have. So I'm excited about that. We can just jump right into it. If you want to just share kind of where you were and what brought you to that first pivotal moment.
Yeah, so I had just started, I was raised in a smaller town, at least, back in the day it was a smaller town, and there was only one major public high school. And I enrolled in this high school, and I'm, small fish, big pond, and everything's overwhelming. And I just wasn't clicking with the school. There was an obscene amount of kids. You had 30 plus students in every class. I was really overwhelmed. It wasn't working. And my best friend at the time, Mike, he had gone to what was a very small charter school in town that not many people went. It wasn't even really known about, but he loved it, thrived, thought that it would be a good fit for me as well. So he was like, maybe you should try this. And he even like talked to my mom about it and explained everything. And so, I said, why not? Let's give it a shot. And I remember the process to get in was like really overwhelming, and you needed multiple referral letters and drug tests and, your transcripts and just all of this stuff. And so there was a lot of hoops to jump through, and I didn't think I was going to get in, and I did. And it was a complete game changer for me to be in this whole new environment where it's small classes, everything's really hyper focused on the students. All of the teachers know who you are and what your story is and how you learn the best. And it was just a really huge 180 from that like overwhelming high school experience that I had been in to start the year. And so
How old were you around this?
I was a freshman. I was 14.
Okay.
And I remember like my freshman year was just amazing. I loved everything about it and I was so excited. And same with my sophomore year. My sophomore year was equally amazing and I was so excited. And then everything went downhill my junior year. I was just in like a really rough place mentally and with things going on. And then I started getting bullied, like really, really severely bullied. And nothing I did or said worked. And no one would help me and no one would stop it. And so my mom and I were just at a loss. And I finally made the decision that I was going to drop out and do Florida virtual school at home, which, again, that was not really a thing. People didn't do that.
Right.
There wasn't a lot known about it, but it was just like I had no other options. I was backed into a corner and I was really miserable. And so I remember the day I was going in to, fill out my withdrawal paperwork and return my textbooks and the whole thing. And I'm in the office and my AP literature teacher happened to be in the office as well. And he sees that I'm upset and he kind of pulls me aside into the teacher's lounge. And he's like, wait a minute, like, what's going on? And
Right.
I just broke down and he shut the door of the teacher's lounge, like, closed the blinds and just sat with me for a very long time while I just unloaded. And he had like this little mini intervention with me, and I unloaded just all of these struggles that I was having and that I felt stuck and that I wasn't getting support and I wasn't getting what I needed and I was miserable and I was just going to stop and do it my own through virtual. And he just listened and he talked to me through everything. And by the end of it, he convinced me to stay. And the next day, was like, hey, there is this poetry contest. I want you to enter it. It was for the state college. The cities, like, all the cities have like their own state college. And
Right.
our state college was doing a poetry contest, and like the top three winners got a full scholarship for your first 2 years, which was just unfathomable to me because I wasn't on a path to college.
Right.
That just wasn't something that was in the cards for me. There was no way I could afford it. My grades were good, but they weren't like colleges throwing money at you good, so that just wasn't a thing. And it wasn't even on my mind. But Mr. Blesky, the teacher, was like, hey, I think that you need to submit for this. Give me 3 poems, we're going to submit. And so I did. And I didn't think anything of it. And then one day, however many months down the road, he calls me into his class and I walk in and he puts the letter down in front of me that says I won the whole thing. And I won
Oh my.
2 full years scholarship. And, that completely changed the trajectory of my life, like, to the core, because
Yeah.
I went from like, okay, I'm just going to be a server bartender in my small town with no college hopes or dreams, not realistic ones anyways, to,
Right.
hey, you're going to college and your first 2 years are completely paid for. And it was just,
Yeah.
it was like a shocking kind of thing to comprehend and realize was happening. And it's all because like this this one person finally stopped and listened and helped. And it's just,
Yeah.
it's really, I especially talking to you, and it's I've done a lot more reflecting on it, and it's just the idea that this really seemingly minor and inconsequential thing that this one person did would completely change the course of my life on such a drastic level.
Right. You can't imagine that asking to go home and write 3 poems, right? Did you have them, or were they things that you had to write that night?
No, I'm pretty sure I had like one or two of them that I had already submitted to him for other, because he was my
Okay.
English, teacher in the younger years, and there were things that I had already
Right.
submitted in like my ninth and 10th grade years, and then I think I wrote a third when he said we need 3 poems, and yeah, it's just
And did you feel when you were writing them, did you feel the pressure as though this was your only opportunity, or were you still in the mindset of like, come on?
no, I was very much like, I'll do it because you're asking me to, and you're an adult that I truly look up to and care about, and it was like, yeah, I'll do it. But in my head,
Right.
I never would have been one of the top contenders. So there wasn't that pressure because I just, it wasn't even fathomable in my mind
Right.
that I would be a contender. So
I wonder if that's why you won too, without that pressure to kind of create. Because I feel like as creators, it is challenging to know that if you enter a contest or something, that you're creating something to try and win, right? But if you don't put that pressure on yourself, I wonder if your poems were better because of that.
it's definitely a possibility because there was no like, oh, I have to make this good, or oh, how can I make
Right.
this more profound or more meaningful or more whatever. I remember just like, especially with the two that I had written in my earlier high school years, I just was like, it was a homework assignment. I just wrote it and
Right.
was like, that's it, and there was no pressure. So I definitely think it caused, if nothing else, just more organic, unfiltered writing to happen. And I will say, like, because in high school I was just kind of like an average student. It wasn't anything overwhelming. But when I started at that state college, I just really, really hit the ground running, and I wanted it to count and I wanted it to matter. And so I managed to pull off, president's lists with my grades every semester, and I got inducted into the Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society. And, I was like, I'm going to make the best of
Yeah.
this. And I worked my butt off.
That was like your catapult. Like he
Yeah.
put you in the little catapult and he was like, all right, here we go.
Like, see ya. Yeah. Yeah. No, and
Yeah.
just knowing that I had this opportunity that I never thought that I would ever have, I was like, I have to do this right. And so, because of that, and that momentum just kept going, and I was like, okay, well, I have my 2 years done, but it's an AA degree. There's nothing that just sets you up to go on for your bachelor's. And so I applied to every public state school in Florida,
Right.
and I got accepted to every single one of them. And I remember just being astonished, because
Yeah.
it was always something that would have been really hard for me to wrap my mind around. And my dream school from when I was just a kid, was University of Florida. Like, that
Yeah.
was the school. And I always, as a kid, had like things with the gators on them, and the UF symbol and the logo. And for some reason, my mom and I just clung to that school. I've never had any family who went there or any kind of history with it,
Right.
but for me, that was it. And so my I got accepted to UCF first, and then it was USF, and then it was FSU, and then it was like a month before school would have been starting for when I applied, when I finally got that UF acceptance. And I was floored. I wanted to fall out of my
Yeah.
chair. It was amazing. And
Yeah. Because 4 years prior, it was just that dream that was just a poster on your wall kind
yeah,
of thing. And now
and then there it was. I
it's
was
so
going.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
3 poems
3 poems
and
and
someone to listen.
one teacher who gave a damn. Yeah, that's all it took.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many other adults at that school that I had approached for help.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
it was just like, nobody listened and nobody took it seriously. And some even got snarky back. And, it was just like, that helpless feeling of like nobody's willing to give you a leg up. And then there was just this one teacher who happened to be in the hallway when I needed him.
And pulling that catapult, just sort of loading you in there and shooting you off into space.
Yeah. Yeah. And
That's
I,
awesome.
I, because we're friends on Facebook, and he's not active on Facebook much anymore, but I've several times over the years, mainly when like big life events happened, when I got hired at my career, when I won my first major award for my work, when I, like got married, I always like reach out to him and I'm like, hey, by the way, just reminding you, none of this would be possible without you, you know,
Yeah.
and just thanking him because man, it never would have happened.
Crazy.
Yeah, never
Yeah.
would have happened without that one day.
And just happenstance in the hallway, like you're walking one way, he sees something, and
Yep,
fate.
yep. And
Yeah.
he happened to not have a class. He had that time to dedicate, and he happened to be getting coffee or whatever it was he was doing in that moment. And yeah, yeah. And so that's right there. Had Mike not have been like, hey, go to this school, and then had Mr. Blesky not been like, hey, what's going on, these
Mhm.
really really simple things, these simple interactions that they never would have thought twice about, completely altered my life and set it on a really really great, happy, successful course.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of that I guess saying about the little pebble in the water, like creates that ripple effect. Or we got the butterfly effect. You have that just Mike saying, "Hey, I know you're not happy here. Try this," and then like everything kind of. That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
Do you think that some of your motivation to succeed once you got there was any of it seated in obligation to that teacher, or do you think it was more like you were just driven now?
I don't think it was obligation in any
Mm-hmm.
sense. And I don't think he ever would have wanted me to feel like I was obligated to do
Right.
well for
Mm-hmm.
him. Like that isn't why he did it in the first
Right.
place. But there was definitely like this kind of like, I'm going to do well because I know I can do well, and I want you to continue being proud and like knowing that you did see the right thing in me. So it wasn't like like I have to do this because he stuck his neck out and got me. You know what I mean? Like it was
Yeah.
just more of like, you've helped me realize that I can do this, and I'm going to show you that yeah, you were right, I was right. This can happen. I'm going to keep working hard.
Yeah. I think maybe I was projecting a little there, in which when I got scholarships and things like that, it was always like I need to prove that I am worthy of said scholarship or whatever it may be. So perhaps I was projecting.
And when I ended up going to UF, I, student loans and grants and getting buried and all of that. But by that point, it was like, you know what? It's worth it. Had you have asked me in high school, oh, are you just going to do student loans? And 4 years worth of loans, there was no way. I wouldn't have been able to bury myself in that. But only 2 years and getting some grants, I was like, this is manageable. I can do this. And so,
But you had a whole new outlook on life and career and those pieces. So I think when you look
yeah,
at it from that new perspective, not I'm going to live in this small town forever and work at the local bowling alley, but now I'm actually going
yeah,
to do something outside of this town, and I feel like I can now. So it
yeah.
feels like
It,
maybe that was why it was worth it.
it was like, you're going to have a career, and careers make good
Yeah.
money, and you can pay off those loans and it doesn't matter. And there was just this whole new world laid out in front of me
Yeah.
that was
Cuz
mine for
as
the
a
taking.
kid, you said, or you alluded to, that that wasn't kind of in the cards, or at least in the realm of possibilities for you.
No, not at all.
Isn't that
And
amazing?
it's amazing. And funny enough, the my friend who got this all started in 2004,
Yeah.
I was almost able to kind of like help him later. So when I went to college, he was having some difficulties back home in our hometown, and I was just kind of like, come move up here with me. Come be my roommate. get out of there, come be up here. And that was a moment that set his life on a new trajectory because he moved up there, moved in with me in my apartment, and then he started going to the community college in Gainesville, and he started like going to school and like doing things that he wasn't doing back in that hometown that sucks you into the abyss. And and then he went on to get his bachelor's, and now he's like living his dream and having his dream career. And so we almost kind of flip-flopped each other, and we both helped when each of us were like in a rut. We lifted the other
Right.
one out and kind of set them on a new path. So it was really cool to have that kind of full circle moment where I
Yeah.
was able to help him after he had helped me, um, and then I was best woman in his wedding. So it
Oh,
works.
I like it. And I like that you
Yeah.
regularly reach out to your teacher that
Yeah.
changed your life. Because I have, after one of my life shifts, when I was 8, my mom died, and I had to move to Georgia, and I lived in Massachusetts at the time, so everything was weird. It was after school had already started, so I was this kid coming into this classroom that's already figured out its dynamics. I was 8, so that's also weird.
The
And my
worst.
mom had just died, so then you add that and everyone's like afraid to touch you, it's like one of those things. But I had that teacher that I had that year change my life, and I don't think it was anything like, that I could pinpoint. But even to the point, I want to say maybe 5 years ago, I was in the area where she lives, and I looked her up, and I called her and I said, can we get breakfast, can we go do this? And we actually reconnected and I just thanked her. I was like, you know what, you saved whatever was happening to that boy at that point in time, and you were like the life raft, so I can relate to continually thanking someone for something that they probably would have done for anyone else, right?
Something that I'm sure never even crosses his mind, you know, but I make sure to be like, yeah, to be like, hey, FYI, you changed my life. Happy
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Is he still a teacher?
Yeah, so it's amazing. He actually, after I graduated, he snagged his whole family, uprooted everybody and him and his wife, and they went over to Lahore, Pakistan, and they started teaching English there, and they taught there for a long time, and then they started teaching in Colombia, and so or Colombia, like the actual like the country Colombia, and went abroad and were teaching abroad and like doing really great things, and I think now they're down in Key West, living a slower lifestyle, much deserved.
Yeah, that's great. We all need people like that in our lives that can like just put, I mean, it was not like you said, it wasn't this major thing, right? It was like one thing, like, you're gonna do this. And that, do you ever go back and look at that poem that changed your life?
You know, every now and then. I still like I'm like, oh, it's terrible. It's so bad. I can't, but I'm more critical on myself. But yeah, every now and then I have it in like my school file in my file cabinet, and I'll pull it out and be like, okay, yeah, so this was it. This was like a one sheet of paper that helped
That's so
launch
cool.
my career and my life. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's wild.
What happened after graduation?
Like anybody does, I fell in love and followed a guy down to Orlando. that didn't. It ended up not working out. Thankfully, it didn't work out. But um, thank goodness I followed him down here. I just started applying to every news organization that my bachelor's degree was in news telecommunications, and I wanted to be a television news reporter, and it was going to be amazing. And one day I
Mm-hmm.
would be an anchor, and so I moved to Orlando with him with no idea what I'm going to do or what. So I just start Googling all the news stations and sending reels and applications to all the news stations until I could get something. And I managed to get my job, at the ABC news station here.
Mm-hmm.
And um, life was just kind of trucking along. I was doing really good in my career. I was thriving. I was excelling beyond any measure that I ever could have imagined. And I was living with a couple of roommates, and I was, ultimately I was single, and I'm like enjoying my time in my city. And then I just happened to one night in the newsroom. I was working overnights at the time. So it was like, I don't know, 11:30 p.m. I'm just starting my shift. And one of my friends worked at the assignment desk, and jokingly, I said to him, I'm like, do you know any very kind, eligible bachelors? I was like, I just want to meet somebody really kind and like laid back. And he goes, actually, yeah, I know a guy. And he shows me a picture. And I was like, oh, give him to me. Like, yes, this one, And so he arranged this opportunity at a running event for us to be there at the same time. But little did I know, he did not tell the guy that he was setting us up that day. He just told me. So I'm like excited and looking cute. And I show up to this running event, and the guy doesn't give me the time of day. I'm trying to talk to him. He's very shy. So I'm trying to talk to him, and he's like, oh, who is this person?
Who
Like,
is
I'm
this
too shy for this.
person?
I can't handle it. Yeah. Because he never gave him the heads up that this was happening.
Because maybe he wouldn't have shown up.
Right. Right. And so I was really like, oh, well, I guess that didn't go too well. But, at least I made new friends, and I went to this new running event, and it was really cool. But eventually the guy came to his senses and found me on social media and was like, hey, sorry about that. Like, let's get together sometime. And that ended up being my husband. And so it's just like this other really seemingly simple thing. I was
Right.
just kind of joking one night and was like, hey, do you know any kind people that are single? And the guy was like, yeah. And then I
Yeah.
meet my husband, and my husband has completely changed my life. In every way, shape, or form, he has reshaped and invigorated my life in ways that I never could have imagined. And like, I'm now living I used to joke that friend who helped me transfer to the high school and then became my roommate, and I helped put his life on a new path. I used to say to him when we were in college, and he brought this up to me a couple years ago. Um, I used to say to him, man, like when I'd be struggling with my classes or whatever the issue was, I was like, you know what? None of this matters because one day I'm just going to be a stay-at-home mom. I was like, that's just what I want to do. I just want to be a stay-at-home mom. That's all I want. And the roommate was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Do your homework. And then, lo and behold, I meet my husband, who's an exceptional human being who like works really hard, and he does really well for himself and for our family, and gave me the opportunity when we had our kid to be a stay-at-home mom. And the friends, he comes to me, it was shortly after my son was born, and he's like, you realize you're doing it? And I was like, I'm doing what? He's like, you're living the dream. What are you talking about? And he recounted the conversation that we had in the apartment all those years ago. And I was like, man, like this never would have been possible had I not met my husband, had I not have been able to get him to actually pay attention to me and like give me the time of day. And it's just like those little moments too of like I was just joking with a friend asking if he knew anybody, and then he knows somebody, and then I meet my husband who is unknowingly able to give me everything I've dreamed of in life, which is sitting at home with my child and being able to be a full-time mom. And so it was one of those moments where it seemed all really insignificant, and the running event was really insignificant, and everything was so minor, but it completely set my life on a new track because like meeting that guy.
Well, had you not jokingly asked if that particular person at your job,
It was literally like I had just had like a failed date, like it was some kind of failure in the dating realm, and I was half
nobody's ever
asleep
had
because I
those.
had awful. I could not imagine dating right now. But I was just like half asleep because it was late. I had just gotten to work. I was going to be there till 7 a.m. And I was just like, "Hey, I'm desperate. Help me." And he was like, "Yeah, I got you." And had I not have even asked that question, I never would have met my husband.
Right. I wonder if you had said a different adjective, where you would be now.
Had I have been like, "Do you know?" Yeah, not kind, because
Right.
like my husband is very kind and quiet and just thoughtful and attentive. And had I have been like, "Hey,
Do you know a party animal?
right. Do you know like a, whatever. I don't even know any other adjectives that would be whatever anti adjectives. And, so it's just these seemingly tiny, tiny moments in my life that completely altered the course of my life and where I'm going.
I'm not super religious. I don't know how you feel, but I do feel that certain things are placed in front of us on purpose. Like there's a
Yeah.
meaning to all those things, and there's a reason why you weren't so busy at work that night, and there was a reason you had a terrible date before that, and there's a reason you were like jokingly asking about it, and then you were
Yeah.
available for the running event. I mean, all these things, like have to line up in some capacity. So there seems to be
Oh,
some kind of,
no, the universe definitely was shining down on me in those
yeah,
moments. Like here is your lifeline. Here is your, little buoy that I'm going to toss to you. It's your job to recognize the opportunity and take it, kind of thing. Definitely.
yeah. Well, and I mean, even the first shift of like going to the charter school, and then the next piece of like all hope is lost. I'm getting bullied. I'm just going to drop out. I'm just going to go live the life that I'm supposed to live because I live in this small town. And then
Right.
you have someone that's like, no, come here.
Yeah. And then the fact that I was like, okay, yeah, I'll listen to you.
Right.
I will grab onto this hand that you are putting out for me and I will take it and we will do this together. And because I could have just brushed him off and been like, I'm fine, leave me alone,
Were you
but
normally
I was
like
like, you
that?
know what? Um, I think it depended on the situation, especially, doing the whole single mom thing. I was used to kind of like that independent needing to handle things on my own. And so there were definitely times where I was like, I'll just figure it out myself. But I think in that moment, I was so broken.
Mm-hmm.
The bullying was so bad. It was
Yeah.
really severe. And I was just broken. And I had reported it and I had gone for help and I had tried and my mom had tried. And like we had both just pleaded with the administration to do something and no one was doing anything. And so I had a person finally who was like, what's going on? Talk to me. And I clung to that, and this was one of those situations where I was just desperate for somebody to say what's going on, talk to me.
Did you have a strong connection with that instructor or that teacher before that?
He was just like the cool teacher, and like he understood. He was my English teacher in the lower grades and then my AP lit teacher in my junior year. And he we kind of had like this back and forth. Like he knew I hate the classics. I hate reading the classics. They're not my thing. Obviously, AP literature, that doesn't fly because that's all you read is the classics. And he had that understanding with me of, okay, I know you're just going to spark notes these. You're not going to read them. As long as you're able to complete the work, I don't care. Do I care? I don't care. And so we kind of had this cool understanding, and he was just always like a very patient, understanding teacher. But we hadn't had like I was like that kid hanging out in his class at the end. There was no like super close. It was just I enjoyed him as a teacher. He paid attention as a teacher, and he just happened to be in the office the day that I was going to turn in my paperwork.
And you know what? I mean, when you thank him, do you thank him for the fact that you are happily married and living your dream now? Because honestly, I think that's the
Yeah,
trigger.
no, honestly, 100%. And I remember when it was either when I got engaged or it was right after I got married. I messaged him again and was like, "Hi, wouldn't be where I am today without you. Wouldn't
Yeah.
have met my husband. Wouldn't be married. Like none of this would have
Yeah.
happened if it weren't for you." And and I think about that a lot, even with that, deadbeat boyfriend who dragged me down to Orlando with him. Had it not have been for him, I never would have moved to Orlando. I was going to go out to California. That was my goal, was to go to California after graduation. And he dragged me down here and I'm like, thank goodness for that
Right?
failed relationship because I never would have been in Orlando to then meet my husband.
You'd still be in Vero, actually.
Yeah. Yes.
You'd still
So
be
it's
there.
just like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just those little I'm always very hyper aware of those little moments that completely change things, and I try very hard to always acknowledge them and to make sure that they are known. And especially with that teacher, and
Yeah.
making sure that he never forgets the life that he changed.
Yeah. I mean, I know you didn't really say you were going to talk about it, but your shift from being a very successful professional to a stay-at-home mom, what has that shift in your life been like? Because I know you mentioned that's kind of you're living your dream now, but you were also living the dream of many other people.
That was the hardest shift of
Mm-hmm.
that change, was that difference.
The
And then
pace.
yeah, the change in pace. And then now we got into a really great rhythm, and we were living the dream. And then the pandemic hit, and we went back to being stuck in the house, and that was a really big struggle because I we were so used to being out and about all day every day, from breakfast time till nap time. We were out exploring, and then we come home.
Right.
And so there was that was a new low, was being stuck in the house and not having those resources we were used to. But then things are back up to a high, and we're back out, and we're getting outside more, and we're doing more things. And I've really grown to love the pace and the lifestyle. And now I'm actually dreading, my son starts school this year in
Oh
August.
no.
And I'm like, okay, I'm about to be alone all day, like 6 hours a day, where my kid, I'm not going to have, like, and my husband's getting ready to go back to the office. He's been, working remotely. And I'm like, so
Right.
I'm literally going to be just like, I'm a social creature, and I'm going to be completely alone all day. What am I going to do? And so now there's going to be a new opportunity for me to pivot and find
Yeah.
ways to re-engage, in my days. And so I'm moving into like a new season of my current job and life, and I'll be able to find new ways to adapt.
I have no doubt that you will find something new that brings you joy. I do know that you finish like novels like every day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So one of the things that I've always been a very, very voracious reader. It's
Clearly.
yeah. It started in high school. It started like my freshman year of high school. Um, I just started reading like a crazy person, and I would read, upwards of 50 books a year, and that maintained all the way through college. There were a couple of times in college where I couldn't read quite as much, so I'd read like 20 books or 25 books in the year. And then I switched to being a full time parent. I had my son, and in those early days, your kid's just a potato who sleeps 20 hours a day. So I like would lose myself in Hallmark movies and reading, and I was
Yeah.
able to get my number high. My books read just started climbing, and then when the pandemic hit, I really, really desperately dove into reading because I was you know trying to, like everybody, just kind of get through what was happening.
Right.
And I found a really, I basically gave up TV. I don't watch TV anymore. I minimally scroll on social media. And when you stop those things, it's unbelievable how much time opens up in your day. And so rather than sitting and, binge watching whatever show, I'll read. Or rather than
Mm-hmm.
sitting on the couch or in the bathroom scrolling your phone, I'll read. And if I'm sitting at the stove making pancakes, which takes like 20 minutes, I'll be reading while I'm
I
doing
made
it.
them last night.
It takes forever, man. It's worth it, but it's timely. And so I find those little moments throughout the day where I just pop open my book and I read a chapter or two, or heck, there's times where I just read a paragraph or two and I get pulled away.
Right.
But that's okay. I keep at it, and
Yeah.
anytime I have a moment, I read. And so now I'm averaging, last year it was like 136 books for last year, and this year I'm on book 35 already. So it's just like
Wow.
when I reprioritize my days with getting rid of TV and getting rid of social media and things like that, it opened up a lot more time to do something that I love to do.
Yeah. Do you think you love to read because of your childhood?
It's certainly so. I mean, it was, I was that kid in the accelerated reader program who was
Hmm.
eating the personal pan pizzas all the time. And I think reading was just always something that I was really good at. And especially as a kid,
Yeah.
I was always looking for ways to feel like I was accomplishing things and like really thriving in things.
Yep.
Um, and so reading was something that I found very early on that I was good at it. And I read very quick, like I read quickly. Most
Hmm.
people read a page, and I've read 3 pages in the time it takes other people to read 1 page. And so it was something that I was good at. And from a young age, I latched onto. And definitely it was something that was an escape and an outlet for me, when I was younger and I necessarily didn't have as many friends to play with. And, my mom and I went to 8 different elementary schools. My mom and I moved a lot. And so I was never really able to make consistent friends or have consistent friendships. And so I always knew I could crack open a book and read.
Yeah, like the Boxcar Children. Did you ever
Yeah,
read those?
I've read
I
every
love
single one
those.
of them. So good. So good.
She even wrote them after she died,
Wow.
which is really a big feat.
That's crazy.
Uh, yeah, I used to watch. I mean, I asked that question because I believe as a kid I read a lot for similar reasons. One, because it was something that I felt good when it was done and I closed it, and that was another one on the stack that I finished. But I think also was me trying to escape into whatever that world was. And the Boxcar Children, especially as an only child with a parent that had just died, it resonated with me in a way that like I wish I was like part of a group of kids that could go live in a boxcar and visit their grandfather or whatever it was. So that's the only reason I asked
Oh,
that.
yeah, no, because it's I mean, and it's really common, especially with people who are really avid regular readers. The
Yeah.
escapism aspect of it, especially for those like myself who love fantasies and read fantasy novels, and there's just like you're going to go live in another world for an hour or two.
Right.
But then there's also, and I'm really guilty of this, like in self-inserting into the story. Like you're reading the story and you are the main character. Like you insert yourself into the story, and a lot of people do that as well. It it can be therapy for people,
Yeah,
especially
for sure.
I was one of the reasons too. I was I deal with really bad illness anxiety disorder, and
Hmm.
so before I started therapy for that, I would need to keep my mind occupied so that I wouldn't spiral. And I would, if I'm reading, my mind can't be worried about my health, so
Right.
I would just constantly be reading because it would keep my mind from spiraling and going down a wormhole. I've had therapy now and I've found other ways to cope, but
Right.
that was something that I used to use reading for as well, was ways to stave off my anxiety.
And I would imagine that too, since it's something that you've been doing forever, it's also extra comfort type blanket,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
as far as reading goes
A
and
hundred
other
percent.
things that are weighing heavily. So maybe your next little pivot is you're going to write something.
You're not the first person to say that. I actually tried. I took a creative writing class in college, and I
Me
tried,
too.
my hand at it. I can't do it. I'm not good. My profession was writing. I was a television news producer, so I was writing news scripts all day long, and like I am a good writer, and I know that now.
Mhm.
You know, in high school, I didn't know that. I know that now without a shadow of a doubt. But writing fiction is a completely
Mhm.
different animal. And it's one that I am just not interested in. I just want to read it. I'll let the other people do the hard work of writing it, and I will enjoy their product and I will read it.
I didn't say fiction, but
Any
do
uh
what you need to.
any writing, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. And I think
You never know.
part of that goes back to like, oh, nonfiction, who actually wants to hear about like my life? There's like that, like, I
Well, clearly the people that are listening to this want to hear about it.
and I appreciate those listeners. Thank you for being
Yeah.
here.
So I just wrap this up with a probably an unanswerable question,
Okay.
and that would be if you could go back to your 14-year-old self and give her one piece of advice before you move to that charter school. Is there anything that you could tell yourself that would help you?
I think the overall theme is just I would have told myself to breathe. Everything's going to work out the way it's supposed to. I would have saved myself a lot of very heavy stress
Mm-hmm.
and very heavy anxiety over how I was going to get the bills paid or how I was going to pass this exam or, just the every little thing from high school all the way through college. I had so much stress and so much tension and so much anxiety because I had all this pressure on myself. And I would just tell myself, breathe. Like it's gonna be okay. It's all gonna work out. Like, and a lot of this in the end won't matter. A lot of these little things that you stressed about won't matter, you know? And so I think that would have been my number one thing to my teenage self, is just to take a breath and it's all gonna be okay.
Right. And trust that the world's going to figure it out
Yes.
with you, along
Yes.
with you.
A hundred
Hmm.
percent.
Well, I am impressed by you, and I'm so happy and excited that your teacher kind of really, I can't stop coming back to it. And maybe
Saved the
that's because I
day.
am a teacher,
Yeah.
but just to know that something that may have been seemingly insignificant to one person changed another person's life completely and led you on the path to where you are now. That's
I
awesome. And
and
your friend
and
helped too.
and my friend, we love Mike. No, and I appreciate you, bringing me on here and listening to me ramble and hearing what I have to say. And this has been really fun.
No, I appreciate you. And maybe when the pandemic is over, we can get together and have a little coffee. I'm not going to talk about books though, because I
That's
don't read.
okay. I'm 100% down to get together.
Or we'll just go to a boot camp and then we'll both die.
There you go. We'll just sweat and throw up later and we'll commiserate together.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you, and thanks for being a part of this.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift, candid conversations about the pivotal moments that change lives forever. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For more information about how you can support the Life Shift podcast, please visit www.thelifeshiftpodcast.com. See you next time.